On the night of March 17th, 1989, 12 people were burned alive in the Robert Taylor homes on Chicago's South Side. All adults, all members of the same family, all eliminated within 4 hours. The perpetrators were not gang members, not drug dealers, not cartel assassins. They were the Davis brothers, Marcus, Terrence, Darnell, and their youngest brother, Jerome, former steelworkers, church-going men, the kind of neighbors who helped carry groceries up 16 flights when the elevators broke down. The Chicago Police Department would later call it the worst mass murder in public housing history. But the reason behind the bloodshed was not drugs, was not territory, was not a debt passed down through generations. It was a boombox, a 15-year-old Panasonic radio that had belonged to their father before lung disease took him in 1986, and one family's decision to take it, to laugh about it, to make it clear that the Davis brothers meant nothing. What follows is not a story about evil men. It is a story about what happens when the factories close and the jobs disappear, when the police stop responding to calls from the projects, when 4 brothers decide that the only justice left is the kind delivered with gasoline and a match. If you have the courage to hear this story, leave your like and subscribe to this channel. But I warn you, this narrative contains extreme violence based on real events. The Robert Taylor homes in 1989 stretched across 2 miles of South State Street, like a concrete graveyard standing upright. 28 towers, 16 stories each, home to nearly 20,000 people packed into apartments the city had stopped maintaining years ago. By that March, unemployment on the South Side had crossed 35%. The steel mills that had employed 3 generations of black families were gone. South Works had cut 11,000 jobs since 1980. Wisconsin Steel had shut its doors overnight, leaving workers with paychecks that bounced and pensions that vanished. Men who had poured molten metal for 20 years now had nothing. No work, no prospects, no way out except a bus ticket to nowhere or a casket. March in Chicago meant temperatures dropping to 19 degrees after dark. The hallways of Robert Taylor smelled like urine, mildew, and the kerosene heaters families used when the building's furnace failed for the 3rd time that winter. At night, you could hear gunshots echo between the towers, sometimes close, sometimes distant, always ignored. You could hear mothers screaming for children to come inside. And beneath it all, the constant hum of generators from the few apartments that had figured out how to steal electricity. The stairwell between the 4th and 5th floors of Building 16 had no working lights. It had been dark for 8 months. Residents walked those steps by memory and faith. That stairwell would matter before this story ends. The nearest police station sat 4 miles away. Response time to Robert Taylor averaged 47 minutes if they responded at all. Most calls went unanswered. The official policy was unofficial neglect. In the Robert Taylor homes, the law was not a presence. It was a rumor. And when the law becomes a rumor, men make their own. Marcus Davis was 43 years old that March, though he looked closer to 60. 6'1", broad shoulders that had started to curve inward from years of labor and defeat. His hands told his whole story, thick calluses across both palms, a missing ring finger on his left hand from a mill accident in 1974, burn scars that wrapped around his wrists like bracelets he could never remove. He walked with a slight limp. Shrapnel from K-San in 1968. The Veterans Administration had rated him 30% disabled, but never sent the checks on time. For 17 years, he had worked the floor at South Works. His father had done the same. When the layoffs came in 1982, Marcus was 41 with a bad leg, a 10th grade education, and skills that no longer existed in the American economy. He had married Loretta in 1970, 19 years together. She worked double shifts at Cook County Hospital nurse's aide, mopping floors and changing bedpans for $6 an hour. Most weeks, her paycheck was the only thing keeping the lights on. Marcus had 3 sons of his own, but this story is about his brothers. Terrence was 41, quieter than Marcus, had worked the same mill until the same layoffs. Now he fixed cars in a vacant lot for cash when anyone had cash to spare. Darnell was 38, the strongest of them. Had boxed Golden Gloves as a teenager before the streets, and then the army pulled him in different directions. He had done things in Vietnam that he never discussed. His hands shook sometimes. Not from fear, from memories. Jerome was 31, the youngest, the one who still believed things could get better. He had finished high school, even took classes at community college before the money ran out. He asked questions the others had stopped asking years ago. That tendency to hope would not survive what was coming. The four Davis brothers had grown up in Robert Taylor, had watched their father work himself to death for a pension that disappeared when the mill did, had promised him, in the hospital room where lung disease finally took him, that they would stay together, that they would protect each other. That promise was about to be tested in ways none of them could have imagined. The Coleman family lived 3 floors up in the same building. Raymond Coleman was 45. His 2 sons, Dwayne and Malcolm, were 23 and 20. His brother Eugene and 3 nephews filled out the rest of their apartment. They were not bad people. They were desperate people. Like everyone else in Robert Taylor, the Colemans were survivors doing whatever necessary to make it through another week. Raymond had worked the same mill as Marcus. Years ago, they had known each other. Not friends, not enemies, just 2 men sharing the same slow collapse. But the Colemans had started taking things. Small things at first, then larger things, and then something that was not theirs to take. The boombox disappeared on the night of March 3rd, 1989. Marcus had left it on the kitchen counter while he helped Loretta bring groceries up the stairs. 16 flights, 4 trips, maybe 40 minutes total. When he came back, the counter was empty. Not just the radio. The window was open. The lock, already broken for months, reported twice, never fixed, had been forced the rest of the way. Marcus stood in that kitchen for a long time, just staring at the empty space where his father's radio had been. That Panasonic had sat on the same shelf in his parents' apartment for 15 years. His father had saved for 3 months to buy it in 1971. It was the only thing Marcus had taken from the apartment after the funeral. It was worth maybe $20 at a pawn shop. But it was not about the money. It was never about the money. The next morning, Marcus heard laughter in the stairwell. Dwayne Coleman's voice. Loud, not even trying to hide. Music playing from a radio Marcus recognized by the static in the left speaker. His father's radio. He climbed the 3 flights slowly. His bad leg ached in the cold. By the time he reached the 5th floor landing, his hands had already curled into fists. Dwayne was sitting on the steps with his younger brother, Malcolm. The boombox sat between them, his father's boombox, playing music in a stairwell that smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. Dwayne. Marcus kept his voice flat. No anger yet, something colder. Dwayne looked up, smiled, did not stand. Mr. Davis, something I can help you with? That radio. It belonged to my father. Dwayne glanced at the boombox like he was seeing it for the first time. This? Nah, found this in the trash room last night. Nobody's property. It was in my apartment yesterday. You know it. I know it. Malcolm laughed. The sound echoed in the dark stairwell. Dwayne leaned back against the concrete steps. You calling me a thief, old man, in front of my brother? That word, old man, landed harder than any fist could have. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. I am giving you until tomorrow. Noon. Return what is mine. Knock on my door and hand it back. We forget this happened. He paused. Do not return it, and this becomes something else. Dwayne stood up slowly. 23 years old. 6 inches taller than Marcus. Unafraid. Something else like what? You know exactly what. Your father knows the rules same as me. A man takes from another man's home. That debt gets settled, one way or another. Dwayne stepped closer. Close enough that Marcus could smell the alcohol on his breath at 10 in the morning. My father is not scared of you, Mr. Davis, and neither am I. He picked up the boombox. You want this back? Come take it. Marcus did not move, did not blink. Noon tomorrow. That is your chance. After that, there will not be another one. He turned and walked down the stairs. Behind him, the laughter resumed. Louder now, making sure he heard it. 2 neighbors had watched the whole exchange from cracked doors. By sunset, everyone in Building 16 knew the Davis and Coleman families were headed towards something that could not be stopped. Marcus tried the law, walked 4 miles to the police station on 51st Street, filed a report for burglary, gave the address, gave the names. Officer at the desk barely looked up. Robert Taylor? We will send someone when we can. Nobody came. Marcus called the next morning. Different officer. Same answer. Sir, we have got shootings, gang activity, real crimes. A missing radio is not priority. He called one more time that afternoon, was put on hold for 23 minutes, then disconnected. The message was clear. No one was coming. No one was ever coming. The deadline passed at noon on March 4th. No knock on the door. No boombox returned. Just silence. That evening, Marcus gathered his brothers in the kitchen. Same table where they had eaten meals together for 20 years. Same chairs where they had sat with their father before the cancer took him. Loretta stood in the doorway. She knew what was coming. Did not try to stop it. Some things you cannot stop. You can only witness. They took what was his, Marcus said. They laughed about it. The police will not help. You know what that means. Terence nodded slowly. Did not need convincing. Darnell cracked his knuckles. His eyes had gone somewhere far away. Somewhere in the jungle, maybe. Somewhere that had prepared him for exactly this. Jerome, 31 years old, still young enough to believe in alternatives, asked the question nobody else would. Is there another way? Marcus met his youngest brother's eyes. There was. They chose not to take it. Silence. Once we do this, there is no going back. We will answer for it eventually. But they answer first. One by one, his brothers nodded. Terence first, then Darnell. Jerome last, his hand trembling slightly as he agreed to something that would destroy him. The decision was made. The preparation took 3 days. Marcus gathered what they needed. His own shotgun, 12 gauge, had not fired it in 4 years. Terence's revolver, 38 caliber, bought legally in 1975. Darnell contributed something else. 4 glass bottles, gasoline siphoned from cars in the parking lot, rags torn from old shirts. He had learned to make them in Vietnam, had hoped he would never make them again. Jerome bought ammunition from a pawn shop on 63rd Street, paid cash, did not give his name. They studied the Coleman apartment. Darnell watched for 2 days, documented who came and went, counted heads. Raymond Coleman, his brother Eugene, Dwayne and Malcolm, 3 nephews who stayed there most nights, 4 other relatives who came and went, 12 people total who used that apartment, all adults, all complicit in the theft or in the laughter that followed. Marcus assigned positions using hand signals he had learned at Quezon. Terence would cover the stairwell, the same dark stairwell where Dwayne had laughed at him. That location was about to serve a different purpose. Darnell would handle the fire. Jerome would watch the hallway. Marcus would knock on the door. By the night of March 17th, everything was ready. 4 brothers, 4 weapons, 4 bottles filled with gasoline, 1 night to settle a debt that the law refused to acknowledge, and 1 family that had no idea what was climbing the stairs toward them. 11:47 p.m. on March 17th, 1989. Temperature had dropped to 21 degrees. No moon. Cloud cover thick enough to swallow the city lights. Marcus Davis sat in the stairwell between the 4th and 5th floors of Building 16. The same stairwell that had been dark for 8 months. The same steps where Dwayne Coleman had laughed at him 2 weeks earlier. Now that darkness served a different purpose. He could hear music coming from 3 floors up, bass thumping through the concrete. The Colemans were having some kind of gathering. Friday night, paychecks cashed, bottles opened. They had no idea what was climbing toward them. Marcus checked his shotgun, opened the breech, confirmed the shells, closed it with a soft click that echoed in the dark. His hands were steady. He had expected them to shake. They did not. Behind him, Terence waited on the landing below. Revolver in his hand, watching the stairs in case anyone tried to run down. Darnell was positioned near the garbage chute on the 7th floor, 4 bottles in a bag at his feet, the smell of gasoline sharp enough to taste. Jerome stood at the end of the hallway on the 8th floor. He was supposed to watch for witnesses, to signal if anyone approached. His hands had not stopped trembling since they left the apartment. Marcus began climbing. Each step brought him closer to something that could never be undone. 11:52 p.m. Marcus knocked on the door of apartment 814. The music inside stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened 6 inches. Chain still attached. Malcolm Coleman's face appeared in the gap. 20 years old. The younger brother. The one who had laughed second loudest in that stairwell. Mr. Davis, it is almost midnight. What do you... Marcus did not wait for him to finish. His boot hit the door just below the chain mount. Old screws. Rotted frame. The chain ripped free like it was made of paper. Malcolm stumbled backward. The shotgun came up. Everyone in the living room. Now. Anyone runs, they die in the hallway. For a moment, nothing moved. Then chaos. Screaming. Chairs knocked over. Someone dropped a bottle that shattered across the linoleum. Marcus stepped inside. Terence followed. Then Darnell with his bag. 12 people in the apartment, exactly as they had counted. Raymond Coleman stood by the window, 45 years old, the patriarch. He had not moved when the door came open, had not screamed. He just watched, like he had known this moment was coming since the confrontation in the stairwell. "Everyone on the floor," Marcus said. "Hands where I can see them." One by one, they knelt. Raymond was the last to lower himself. His eyes never left Marcus. "This is about the radio," he said. Not a question. This was never about the radio. 12:03 a.m. Eugene Coleman was the first. Raymond's brother, 42 years old. He had been the one who taught Dwayne how to pick locks, had laughed loudest when the story spread through the building. Marcus found him trying to crawl toward the back bedroom. "Please," Eugene said. "I did not take it. That was the boys. I did not have anything to do with it." "You laughed." "What?" "When your nephew told the story. You laughed. My father's radio. 15 years he kept that radio. And you laughed." Eugene's face twisted. "It was just a joke. It was just a radio. You cannot do this over a radio. Watch me." The shotgun spoke once. Eugene stopped crawling. In the living room, someone started screaming, high-pitched, terrified. Darnell's voice cut through it. "Quiet! Everyone quiet, or you are next." The screaming stopped. 12:11 a.m. Dwayne Coleman had tried to run, had made it as far as the stairwell before Terence caught him on the landing. Now he knelt in the same darkness where he had laughed at Marcus 2 weeks before. The same steps, the same dead lights, different circumstances. "Mr. Davis." His voice had changed. No more arrogance, no more laughter, just fear. "Mr. Davis, please, I will give it back. I will give you money. I will do anything." Marcus stood over him. "You had your chance. Noon on March 4th. You chose to laugh instead. I was drunk. I was stupid. Please. You called me old man." Dwayne's breath came in short gasps, fog in the frozen air of the stairwell. "I did not mean it. I swear I did not mean it. You picked up my father's radio, looked me in the eye, told me to come take it. Please. I have a daughter. She is 3 years old. She lives with her mother on the west side. Please. She needs me." Something flickered in Marcus's chest, a crack in the cold purpose that had carried him this far. He thought about his own children, his grandchildren, what they would think when they learned what he had done tonight. The crack sealed itself. "You should have thought about her before you took what was mine." The shotgun echoed through the stairwell. Dwayne Coleman fell against the steps his body would never climb again. 12:19 a.m. Jerome found Marcus in the hallway. His youngest brother's face had gone pale, sweat on his forehead despite the cold. "I cannot do this." "You do not have a choice. We are past choices now." "Marcus, they are begging. They are crying. That woman in there, she has not stopped praying since we came in." "Then do not listen." Jerome grabbed his arm. "This is wrong. What we are doing is wrong. Dad would not have wanted this." Marcus turned to face his youngest brother. For a moment, he saw Jerome as he had been 20 years ago, 10 years old, asking questions about everything, still believing the world made sense. That boy was dying tonight, along with everyone else. Dad worked 40 years and they threw him away like garbage, gave his whole life to that mill and could not afford the medicine that might have saved him. And when he died, the only thing he left us was that radio. Marcus's voice dropped. "They took it, they laughed. And nobody, not the police, not the city, not God himself, was going to do anything about it." He put his hand on Jerome's shoulder. "We are past right and wrong now. We are in the place where men go when everything else fails. You can hate me tomorrow, but tonight you do what needs to be done." Jerome's eyes were wet. Something in them had broken, something that would never be repaired. He nodded slowly. They walked back to the apartment together. 12:28 a.m. Darnell stood in the doorway of the back bedroom. Inside, 3 of Raymond's nephews huddled against the wall. Curtis, 26, Andre, 24, Michael, 22. All 3 had been there the night the radio was stolen. All 3 had helped carry other things out of the Davis apartment. Things Marcus had not even noticed were missing until later. A watch that had belonged to his grandfather. $30 from a coffee can in the back of a closet. His father's reading glasses. Small things, worthless things, everything things. Darnell unscrewed the cap on the first bottle. Curtis understood before his cousins did. "No, please. Not like that. Not fire. Anything but fire. Should have thought about that before your family decided we were easy targets. We did not know. We did not think. No, you did not think." The bottle shattered against the wall. Gasoline splashed across the bedroom. Andre started crying, 24 years old, sobbing like a child. Michael tried to rush the door. Darnell put him down with one punch, boxing instincts from 30 years ago. The body remembered what the mind tried to forget. The second bottle followed the first, then the third. The smell of gasoline filled the room so thick it burned the eyes. Darnell stepped back into the hallway, pulled a book of matches from his pocket. "Any last words?" Curtis was praying, muttering something too fast to understand. Andre had gone silent, staring at nothing. Michael lay unconscious on the floor. Darnell struck the match, held it for a moment. The flame reflected in his eyes, and behind them, a jungle that had never stopped burning. He dropped it. 12:39 a.m. The fire spread faster than Marcus had expected. These buildings were old, walls soaked in decades of neglect, materials that should have been replaced in 1975. They burned like they had been waiting for it. Smoke poured into the hallway. From inside the apartment, screaming, then silence, then more screaming, different voices this time. Marcus moved through the chaos like a man walking through someone else's nightmare. Malcolm Coleman, the one who had opened the door. He found him in the bathroom, trying to open a window painted shut since 1982. He did not beg, just looked at Marcus with something almost like understanding. "My brother should not have laughed at you." "No, he should not have." The shotgun ended the conversation. The window would never open. 12:44 a.m. Raymond Coleman was the last. Marcus found him exactly where he had been since the beginning, standing by the window, not trying to run, not trying to hide. The apartment burned around them, smoke making it hard to see, hard to breathe, but Raymond had not moved. "You really did it," he said. "All of them. All of them. Over a $15 radio. It was never about the money. You know that." Raymond nodded slowly. "I know. It was about respect. About you looking at me and seeing nothing. About my boys taking from you because they thought you were too old and too beaten to do anything about it." "Yes. I told them not to, after the stairwell. Told Dwayne to give it back. He would not listen. Said you were a broken-down old man playing tough." Marcus raised the shotgun. He was wrong. Raymond looked at the flames climbing the walls. "I know he was." "Anything else you want to say?" Raymond Coleman took a deep breath of smoke-filled air. "Just that I understand. I would have done the same thing, maybe not like this, but something." He closed his eyes. "Do it." The shotgun spoke one final time. Raymond Coleman fell. It was over. 12:51 a.m. 12 members of the Coleman family were dead. The worst mass murder in Chicago public housing history was complete. Marcus walked out of the burning apartment. His clothes smelled like smoke and gasoline. His face was black with soot. His hands, the same hands that had poured steel for 17 years, that had held his children when they were born, that had closed his father's eyes in the hospital room, those hands had become something else now. Killer's hands. They would never be anything else again. Terence emerged from the stairwell. Darnell came from the other direction, Jerome last, walking like a man who had left his soul somewhere behind him. Nobody spoke. There were no words for what they had done. They walked down 16 flights of stairs, past neighbors who had heard the shots and smelled the smoke but stayed behind locked doors, past the lobby where the security guard had abandoned his post 3 years ago, out into the March night where the temperature had dropped to 19 degrees and their breath made clouds that disappeared into the darkness. Behind them, flames lit the windows of the 8th floor, sirens in the distance, getting closer. Too late. Always too late in Robert Taylor. Marcus climbed into his car. His brothers followed. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Jerome made a sound, low at first, then louder. He was crying, not soft tears, deep, broken sobs that shook his whole body. The sound of a man who had just discovered what he was capable of. Darnell stared straight ahead, his face blank. He had gone somewhere far away, somewhere the fire could not reach him. Terence's hands gripped the steering wheel, even though the car was not moving. Knuckles white, jaw clenched. Marcus looked at his own hands, covered in soot, trembling now, finally trembling. "What did we do?" Jerome's voice cracked. "Marcus, what did we do?" Marcus did not answer. He started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot, drove past the fire trucks racing toward Building 16, 4 brothers who had crossed a line they could never uncross, carrying the weight of 12 dead, knowing they would carry it for the rest of their lives, however long that turned out to be. 6 hours after the last shot echoed through the 8th floor of Building 16, a maintenance worker named Gerald Washington discovered what remained. Gerald was 53 years old, had worked for the Chicago Housing Authority for 22 years. His job that morning was to check the fire damage, routine inspection, file a report that nobody would read. He had expected burned walls, smoke damage, maybe some structural concerns. What he found would follow him into his grave. The first body was in the hallway. Malcolm Coleman, 20 years old, shotgun wound to the chest. The fire had not reached him. He looked almost peaceful, like he had simply decided to lie down and rest. Gerald's training told him to leave, to call the police, to not touch anything. His legs would not move. He stood in that hallway for what felt like hours. Then he forced himself to step forward. The apartment door was gone, burned off its hinges. Inside, the smell hit him first. Smoke, gasoline, and something else. Something sweet and terrible that he would later learn was the smell of burned human flesh. He counted bodies as he moved through the wreckage. 1 in the living room, 1 by the window, 3 in the back bedroom, burned beyond recognition, huddled together in the corner like they had tried to protect each other from the flames. Gerald made it to the bathroom before his legs gave out. He vomited until there was nothing left. Then he crawled back to the hallway and pulled the fire alarm that should have been pulled 6 hours earlier. By 7:30 that morning, the body count had reached 12. Robert Taylor Holmes woke to discover what had happened while they slept. 12 people eliminated in a single night. 12 families who would never recover. 12 caskets that would need to be closed because there was nothing left worth viewing. 4 blocks away, the congregation of Greater Mount Zion Baptist Church was gathering for Sunday morning service. They sang hymns about mercy and redemption. They had no idea how close they had been to hell while they dreamed. Detective Patricia Okonkwo arrived at Building 16 at 8:15 a.m. She was 41 years old, 18 years on the force, 12 in homicide. Had seen shootings, stabbings, overdoses, accidents that defied description. But walking through apartment 814, stepping over bodies and burned furniture, she felt something shift in her chest. This was not passion. This was not rage. This was not the chaos of gang violence or drug deals gone wrong. This was systematic, planned, executed with a precision that spoke of military training. This was not random, she told her partner, Detective Michael Reeves. Someone planned this down to the minute. The evidence came together over the next 48 hours. 14 shell casings, 12 gauge and 38 caliber, 2 different weapons, possibly 3. Boot prints in the soot leading from the apartment to the stairwell, size 11, work boots, the kind sold at every hardware store in Chicago. Gasoline purchased somewhere. They would check every station in a 5-mile radius. And then there were the witnesses. Mrs. Dolores Franklin, 72 years old, lived in apartment 809. She had heard the first shot at 12:03 a.m., had looked through her peephole and seen a man with a shotgun walking past her door. "I know who it was," she told Detective Okonkwo. "I have known that man for 15 years. "Who?" "Marcus Davis, 8th floor. Apartment 802. The detective wrote down the name. "You are certain?" "I watched him carry groceries for my sister until her hip gave out. I know his walk. I know his shape. It was Marcus." Other witnesses confirmed the identification. The confrontation in the stairwell 2 weeks earlier, the stolen radio, the deadline that came and went. By Monday afternoon, Detective Okonkwo had 4 names: Marcus Davis, Terrence Davis, Darnell Davis, Jerome Davis, brothers, former steelworkers, veterans, church-going men who had never been arrested for anything more serious than a traffic violation. She stood in Marcus's kitchen, holding the police report he had filed 12 days earlier. Burglary, missing radio, missing watch, missing cash. Case status, open, no follow-up. $12 in stolen property, she said. That is what they took from him. Detective Reeves shook his head. And 12 people are dead because we could not be bothered to send a patrol car. Okonkwo looked around the apartment. Small, clean. Pictures of children and grandchildren on the walls, a Bible on the kitchen table. Nothing that suggested a man capable of what had happened 3 floors up. But she had learned something in 18 years of homicide work. Everyone is capable, given the right circumstances, the right pressure, the right moment when the last thread of hope finally snaps. Marcus Davis had reached that moment, and 12 people had paid for it. On Tuesday, March 21st, 4 days after the fire, Chicago police approached the Davis apartment. 16 officers, body armor, rifles ready. They expected resistance, a standoff, maybe a final shootout that would add to the body count. What they found was Marcus Davis sitting at his kitchen table, unarmed, hands flat on the surface, waiting. The door was unlocked. "Marcus Davis," Detective Okonkwo said, "I need you to come with us." "I know." He stood slowly. 43 years old, moving like 70. "My brothers are in the living room. They are not armed either. We decided Sunday morning that we would not run." Okonkwo signaled to her team. They moved through the apartment, found Terrence on the couch, hands raised, Darnell in the corner, face blank, eyes somewhere far away. Jerome on the floor, knees pulled to his chest, rocking slightly. One by one they were handcuffed. No resistance, no weapons. Just 4 men who had crossed a line and now accepted what came after. Okonkwo put the handcuffs on Marcus personally. Was it worth it? Marcus looked around his apartment, at the pictures of his children, at the Bible his mother had given him 40 years ago, at everything he was about to lose. "Ask me when I am dying in prison. Then I will tell you." Loretta Davis watched from the bedroom doorway. She had not slept since Friday night. Had known since she heard the sirens that her life was over too. Not legally, not criminally, but everything she had built, the family, the future, the hope that someday things would get better, all of it was walking out the door in handcuffs. She did not wave, did not call out. just watched her husband and his brothers disappear down the hallway, knowing she would never touch him as a free man again. Robert Taylor Holmes split down the middle. At the laundromat on State Street, conversations grew heated. Some said the Davis brothers were monsters, mass murderers, death penalty, no mercy for what they had done. 12 people, said Cynthia Holloway, 44, who had known 2 of the Coleman cousins. 12 people who will never come home, children without fathers, a grandmother who had to identify bodies from dental records. How can anyone defend that? Others said something different. I am not saying what they did was right, said Roosevelt Jenkins, 61, retired steelworker who had known Marcus since childhood. He stood outside the corner store, hands in his pockets, breath fogging in the March cold. But I understand it. Man works his whole life. Mill closes. Government forgets him. Police ignore him. Then someone breaks into his home and takes the only thing his dead father left him. He shook his head. Something is going to break. We are all closer to that breaking point than anyone wants to admit. The Coleman family demanded maximum punishment, held press conferences, gave interviews, showed pictures of the dead. The Davis family supporters stayed quiet, did not speak to reporters. But in Robert Taylor, behind closed doors, more than a few people admitted what they could not say publicly. They understood, not approved, not condoned, understood. The code ran deep in these towers. When the system fails, men make their own justice. Right or wrong, good or evil. Those categories stop mattering when you have been abandoned by everyone who was supposed to help. Detective Okonkwo understood too, more than she wanted to admit. She went home that Tuesday night and sat in her kitchen for a long time, thinking about the police report Marcus had filed, thinking about the 47-minute response time that usually meant no response at all, thinking about what she might have done if someone had stolen the last thing her father ever gave her and laughed about it in her face. She did not have an answer. That was the most disturbing part. The trial began in September of 1989. Venue changed to Cook County Criminal Court downtown. No impartial jury possible in Robert Taylor, where everyone knew everyone, where the code ran too deep, where half the potential jurors had already made up their minds one way or the other. 48 combined counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution had confessions. All 4 brothers had given statements within hours of their arrest. Detailed, calm, almost relieved to finally say it out loud. The forensic evidence was overwhelming. Shell casings matched to weapons found in the Davis apartment. Boot prints matched to boots in Marcus's closet. Gasoline residue on Darnell's hands even after he had washed them twice. Survivor testimony from neighbors who had seen everything through cracked doors and peepholes. A timeline so precise it left no room for doubt. The defense tried, argued extreme emotional disturbance, economic desperation, a cultural code of justice older than American law. They brought in economists who testified about unemployment rates, sociologists who explained what happens when communities are abandoned, veterans who spoke about what war does to the mind. The prosecution destroyed it in closing arguments. Emotional disturbance does not involve 14 days of planning, does not involve military-style coordination, does not involve purchasing ammunition from 3 different stores. This was not passion, this was premeditated mass murder. The jury deliberated for 11 hours over 2 days. Guilty, all counts, all defendants. Sentencing came 6 weeks later. Marcus Davis, life without the possibility of parole. Terrence Davis, life without the possibility of parole. Darnell Davis, life without the possibility of parole. Jerome Davis, 40 years to life. The judge noted his age and his lesser role in the planning. Small mercy, meaningless mercy. When given a chance to speak, Marcus said only 14 words. I did what the law would not. My only regret is that it came to this. Loretta Davis, sitting in the gallery, put her face in her hands. She did not make a sound. She had used up all her tears months ago. Marcus showed no emotion as they led him away, like he had known from the moment he knocked on that door that this was exactly where he would end up. Marcus Davis served 23 years at Stateville Correctional Center. During that time, he worked in the prison library, taught other inmates to read, helped men write letters to children they would never see grow up, was peaceful, respected even by violent criminals who had done far worse than he had. Guards said he was one of the quietest inmates they had ever supervised, which always struck them as darkly ironic. The man responsible for the worst mass murder in Chicago public housing history spent his days helping people find books about forgiveness. Loretta visited every Saturday for 19 years, drove 14 miles each way, rain or snow or summer heat, never missed a week until her body would not let her continue. Diabetes took her legs first, then her kidneys, then her mind. She died in March of 2008, 67 years old, 19 years to the month after the fire. In her final days, the nurses said she kept asking for Marcus, kept saying he would be home soon, kept believing it was still 1988 and none of it had happened yet. Marcus was not allowed to attend the funeral. He learned of her death from a chaplain who visited his cell, sat in silence for 3 days, did not eat, did not speak. The guards considered putting him on watch, but he was not a danger to himself. He was just empty. Whatever had kept him alive for 19 years had walked into a grave on the south side. On November 14, 2012, at 66 years old, Marcus Davis died of heart failure in the prison infirmary. The chaplain reported his last words, "Tell my sons I am sorry. Tell them I was wrong." He was buried in the prison cemetery. Simple marker, Marcus Davis, 1946 to 2012. No mention of what he had been, father, husband, steelworker, veteran, murderer, just dates marking the beginning and end of a life that transformed from protector to destroyer in one frozen March night. Terrence Davis outlived his brother by 3 years, died of lung cancer in 2015, 68 years old. He had started smoking in prison, said it gave him something to do with his hands, the same hands that had held a revolver in a dark stairwell. He never spoke publicly about what happened, never gave interviews, never wrote letters to journalists or true crime writers who requested his story. In his final weeks, he told his assigned counselor only one thing. "I think about Dwayne Coleman every night, 23 years old, begging for his life. I still hear him begging." He died alone. No family at his bedside. His children had stopped visiting in 1994. Darnell Davis was released in 2019. 30 years served. He was 68 years old. Walked out of Stateville with a plastic bag containing his personal effects and $47 in gate money. He lives now in a halfway house on the west side. Works part-time at a warehouse. Speaks to no one about his past. His neighbors think he is just another old man worn down by time. They do not know about the fire. Do not know about the 3 young men who died in that back bedroom. Do not know that sometimes, late at night, Darnell wakes up screaming words in Vietnamese that he does not remember learning. The jungle never left him. And now it has company. Curtis, Andre, Michael. 3 more faces in the darkness. 3 more voices asking why. He will carry them until he dies. However long that turns out to be. Jerome Davis, the youngest, the one who had asked if there was another way. He was paroled in 2014 after serving 25 years, 56 years old. He tried to build a life. Got a job washing dishes at a restaurant in Pilsen. Rented a room above a laundromat. Went to therapy twice a week. Took medication that was supposed to quiet the memories. It did not work. He could not escape the faces. Could not stop seeing Malcolm Coleman's expression when the door burst open. Could not stop hearing the screaming from the back bedroom when Darnell lit the match. could not stop feeling his own hands shaking as he stood in that hallway and did nothing to stop it. On the morning of August 7th, 2016, Jerome Davis walked to the Dan Ryan overpass, stood at the railing for approximately 15 minutes. Witnesses said he appeared calm, said he looked at the traffic below like he was making a decision he had already made years ago. Then he climbed over. He was 58 years old. The fall lasted less than 4 seconds. Paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. In his room, they found a letter addressed to no one in particular. 3 sentences. I was 31 years old when I helped murder 12 people. I have been dying every day since. I am just making it official. The newspapers called it a tragic end to a tragic story. Those who knew him said he had finally found the only peace available to a man who had done what he had done. The Coleman family never recovered. Raymond's widow, Shirley, lived until 2004, 71 years old. She never remarried, never left Chicago, raised her grandchildren alone after their parents were taken from them, worked double shifts at a nursing home until her back gave out. When reporters found her in 2001 for her anniversary retrospective, she said only one thing. 12 people, my husband, my sons, my nephews, gone because someone stole a radio. She shook her head. Not a day goes by that I do not ask God why. He has not answered yet. Dwayne Coleman's daughter, the 3-year-old he had begged for, is 36 now. She changed her name, moved to Atlanta, does not speak about her father, does not speak about what happened to him. Therapists have told her the trauma is buried so deep it may never surface. She hopes they are right. The Robert Taylor homes were demolished between 1998 and 2007. All 28 towers, brought down one by one. The official reason was urban renewal, mixed income housing, a fresh start for the South Side. The real reason was that some places absorb so much suffering they can never be clean again. Building 16 was demolished in 2002. The morning it came down, a small group gathered to watch. Former residents, reporters, curiosity seekers. Nobody mentioned the Davis brothers or the Coleman family. But everyone was thinking about them. The dust cloud rose over the South Side like a ghost releasing itself from a prison it had occupied for 50 years. Where the Robert Taylor homes once stood, there is now a mixed development called Legends South. New buildings, new names, new families who have no idea what happened on the ground beneath their feet. The soil remembers, but soil does not speak. 36 years have passed since that March night. Was Marcus Davis a murderer? Yes. He eliminated 12 people with planning and precision, transformed his brothers into killers, destroyed 12 families, including his own. Was he a desperate man pushed beyond his limits by a system that had abandoned him? Also, yes. The uncomfortable truth is, both things can be true at the same time, and that is the most disturbing part of this story, because it forces us to ask questions we would rather avoid. What would we do if someone stole the last thing our father ever gave us? How far would we go if the police refused to help? Does justice exist when the system fails? Where is the line between protecting your dignity and becoming a monster? There is no easy answer, no clear moral, no satisfying conclusion, just a simple and terrible truth. Violence breeds more violence. Broken systems create desperate people, and sometimes the line between victim and perpetrator gets so thin it disappears entirely, leaving only bodies and questions and children who grow up without fathers on both sides. If this story made you think about justice, desperation, and the price we pay when systems fail, leave your like and share this video. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that challenge what we think we know about right and wrong. Comment below. What would you have done in Marcus Davis's position? Where do you draw the line? Because these stories are not just history, they are happening right now, in forgotten housing projects and abandoned factory towns and communities where the law is just a rumor. Somewhere tonight, someone is reaching their breaking point. Someone is deciding that the only justice left is the kind they deliver themselves. Until next time, remember, the monsters we fear are not always born that way. Sometimes they are made. One stolen radio, one ignored police report, one desperate night at a time.